lad. I wish you'd have come over.
Well, George,
is that it? I've got a lot more to tell you, yeah.
I know, but I won't have enough time in the day. I need to get on now and judge the next kit.
I was thinking about something.
Tell me something, what you want to pass on to somebody, some other young people. It could be anything, any advice you can give them. How would somebody that's starting into the sport, would they start from?
There's only one way to start in the sport if you're serious about it, and that's to buy a kit of young birds off somebody. And there's a dozen people in the country where you could go and buy a kit of young birds and know you've got decent pigeons in that 20 young birds. If you get 20 young birds, you've got a good cross-section of their gene pool. And what you've got to do is be patient and not fly them. You've got to ask that fancier if he'll pair them pigeons up for you the first year when they know which are cocks and hens. Preferably get a bit of paperwork, otherwise you're not going to know which are nest mates, brothers and sisters. The following year you pair them up, make as many pair out of them 10, 20 youngsters as you can, and hopefully you keep some of what you've already got and run the eggs under them and get as many out of them young birds the following year. Breed 40 if you can out of them, just keep running the eggs and fly them young birds hard twice a day until they start rolling. Once you get enough of them rolling, make a first team, might only be 12 in it. At the end of that year, you've got your pigeons that's going to make your family, and them that you've bred yourself, them young birds. Pair the best to the best, that's all and you're away. That's the best way to start up, the only way. To go round and pay £100 for a pair of stock pigeons and end up with a pair that's a 2-year-old.
And one last question, George. Who was your mentor who brought you on? Who would you say that you learnt the most from?
One of the best people was without a doubt. Bob Brown and Bill Barrett never told you a lot. They were just pigeon men, but they weren't. I don't think they were knowledgeable on feeding. Or I learnt a lot, like Dave was saying when he flew tipplers. I mean, I flew tipplers in the 80s. 1984, I flew 5 hens, 19 hours 35 here. Dark trained them, dropped them at 25 minutes to midnight, let them out at 4 o'clock that morning. I finished 3rd all England and Ireland with them. And when you're flying 5 tipplers in a competition, all 5 have got to be in the same body condition.
But who was it that educated you?
The best thing that happened to me was meeting Arthur Beardsmore from Bloxwich in Birmingham, who was a racing fancier. He was a friend of Bill Barrett's, and he was recognised as the best working class racing flyer in England at the time. And I went over there in 1990, took a racing mate over, and in the corner of his pen, in his racing loft, he'd got a corner wired off, and there was a cock. And I said, Arthur, what's this cock bird? And he's talking to Johnny Dowd about races, and he never answered me, and I left it a while. I said, Arthur, what's this cockbird doing in here? He still never answered me. And as we were walking back up the path, we've got our wives with us, and they're in the house, and it was getting late, 10 o'clock time. And he said, I've got some home brew in the house, we'll have a drink. And as we're walking up the path, he says, George, that's the bullcock. I said, bullcock? Now, I'd had pigeons all my life, always had pigeons. And this is before anybody mentioned bullcock. There'd been nothing in the racing magazines about bullcocks. He said, I pair my best 3 or 4 hens to that cock. I said, how do you do that? And he explained it to me. I said, Arthur, if I don't grasp it, can I phone you? He says, phone me. And I phoned him once to ask him something again about it. That was in 1990. In 1991, I paired a red grizzle cock 8619 on 7 hens, and I bred 31 youngsters out of it, running the eggs. They weren't all together on it. That was the best advice I had. And a year or 2 later, that good cock, 8619, I had a good Iranian friend, or I thought he was a friend, in Canada. And I felt indebted to him because I'd stayed with him at his house in Toronto with Bill Barrett, and we stayed with him in Vancouver, me and Graham Dex. And he phoned me up and he said he'd already got some of my pigeons and some of Bill's. And he wrote me a letter saying he thought mine were better than what he'd had off Bill, but that was just bullshit. He said, what's your best pair of pigeons, George? I says, the red grizzle cock, 8619, and a black mottle hen. Can't remember her number. In fact, she got a a Canadian ring on, because when I was with him in '84 I bought some of his rings back. He said, could I borrow that pair? I said, how can you borrow them? I said, he said, George, if you lend them me, I promise you, I'll send them you back, just lend them me for 1 season. And I was stupid enough, I sent him that pair of pigeons. That red grizzle cock 8619 was a bit grouse legged. That's where some of the feather legs come on mine. Anything of mine that's got grouse on its legs
comes through that.
That cock's on its pedigree, 100%. He's the best cock I've ever had, for speed and frequency. Anyway, when I came to phone him up and ask him to send them back, he said, I haven't bred many out of them, can I keep them another season? I said, no, Abdul, I want them back. You've got to come back. And in the end, after numerous phone calls, I said, Abdul, send them pigeons to Ellis MacDonald in Alabama. Ellis was a good friend, a real good friend. I've just been out there and spent 2 weeks with him last year.
Oh yeah, I remember.
Anyway, I phoned him up. I said, have you sent to him? He said, I was putting him in the basket to send, and the hen got out.
Oh, the old.
He sent the cock to Ellis in Alabama, and the hen bird got out the box when he was putting it in to ship it. And then Reinhard Wagner, who unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, died a few weeks back from Toronto.
Yeah.
Reinhard phoned me up and he said, George, the Black Moss Lane, what's its ring number? And I told him. He said, I might be able to get it back for you. Now, I'm not very good at geography, but from Toronto to Vancouver is thousands of miles. I said, well, how are you going to do that? He said, well, leave it with me. He said, and he phoned me up about a week later and said, I've got your Black Moss Lane. I said, great. He says, I'll get it over to you in about 12 months' time. I said, send it straight away and I'll pay whatever it comes to. The good bit is, I was flying in the World Cup and Montenegro was judging. In fact, I finished second, so I don't know what unit it was. Monty came walking down the garden and he got a big coat on. And he said, I've got something for you, George. Because I stayed with Montenegro twice. Me and Bill Barrett stayed at his house in Vancouver for a week's holiday. I could tell you stories about that. Anyway, Monty walks down, he says, hey, I said, what you got? And he got the Black Moss Lane. And he cut the ring off, cut the tail off, cut the wings off, put it in his coat pocket and flew over with it. He gave me the Black Moss Lane back. That's good, isn't it?
That is good. Right, George, thank you very much for your time.
Well,
I could be sat here.
We didn't get much about the feeds and that, did we? You wanted the feeds really. But that wheat, barley and Milo, if they leave any. And the only other thing is, every Wednesday and Thursday I give them cider vinegar. I've done for over 12 months now. Organic cider vinegar, 15 mil to a litre of water. I give it them on Wednesday and Thursday. Okay. Then they have clear water.
How often do you fly your birds?
Old birds, I try not to fly them very often. I mean, a lot of the times old birds, when they go off, they want resting. If you've got 3 weeks before the next fly, you could shut them down for well, if you've got a month before the next fly, you could shut them down for 2 weeks, then start them off again. The reason they go off a lot on them, if it's a good kit, is overflying them. I know John don't agree with that, but if you overfly them, you fly all the work rate out of them. And the stronger they are, the stronger you make these pigeons, the less resistant, the more resistance they've got to the roll.
Yeah.
The weaker they are, the more work rate you'll get. And the more hungry they are, the more work rate you'll get. But you've got to have that good flying location like Jim Rennick. If you live there, you could go 28 hours from your last feed to liberation on fly day, and they'd still do 20 minutes. You couldn't do it here. I've tried, you can't do it.
No problem, George. I could be sat here talking to you all day,
well,
all of this, all of England.
You said you wanted to interview me.
But,
I want to interview you.
I'll have to do a video call with you sometimes, George, and I can interview you through that.
That'd be good then. But I've got to give you that paperwork. But you'll send that paperwork back, won't you?
Yeah, I will.
And don't tell Dino about it, will you? Or Les.
It's our secret then. All right then, George. Thanks you.
Thanks very much. And thanks for judging. I appreciate it.
No problem.